When consumer confidence dips, should you cut prices or double down on brand loyalty? In this episode of Undone Marketing, we reveal why focusing on value, not discounts, is the smartest marketing move during economic downturns. We'll break down the importance of social listening, flexible offers, and strategic content creation. Plus, discover the best tools to strengthen relationships and stay ahead in uncertain markets. Learn how to recession-proof your marketing. Let's begin.
So, picture this, right? You're just scrolling through your newsfeed, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a headline. And it says, consumer confidence at lowest point since 2011.
Yeah.
Kind of scary, right?
A little bit.
It makes you just want to, crawl under the covers.
Yeah.
But, before we get all doom and gloom about it, that's actually why we're doing this deep dive today, right? We've got this article, Marketing During Consumer Confidence Downturns. And it's surprisingly not as, scary and pessimistic as you might think.
Yeah, I actually found it to be quite uplifting and insightful.
Yeah, it's all about strategy.
Exactly, yeah.
Actionable strategies.
Yeah.
So first we're going to break down how these economic, ripples, how they actually impact you, the listener, as a consumer, right?
Oh.
And then we're going to uncover some seriously cool tactics that businesses are using.
I'm excited to get into those.
Yeah, and not just to survive, but to actually thrive when things feel a little bit shaky, right? It's like learning to surf. The choppy waters can be a blast once you know how to ride those waves.
It's a great analogy.
So starting off, what even is consumer confidence?
Right. Well, it's not just some, abstract economic term that we hear, economists talking about on the news. It's something that actually impacts all of us every day. It affects our spending habits, because when people feel uncertain about the future, they naturally become a little bit more cautious, right? Mm-hmm. About where their money goes.
Yeah, it's like a giant economic mood ring. If the mood ring's blue, everybody's clutching their wallets a little tighter.
Right, exactly.
And this article's not sugarcoating it. Consumer confidence really is at its lowest since 2011.
Yeah, it's pretty striking when you see that statistic.
Yeah.
But I think what's really interesting is that savvy businesses, they're seeing this not as a roadblock, but as a challenge to kind of adapt and innovate.
So instead of panicking, they're like, okay, let's shift gears, right? Right. And what's really fascinating is that it's not about abandoning marketing altogether.
Yeah.
It's about evolving it. Right. Have you noticed any changes in your own spending habits lately?
Well, yeah. It's funny you should ask because I've been much more conscious about, big purchases, right?
Yeah.
Holding off on that fancy new gadget or that, luxury item that I might have just, sprung for in the past.
Totally.
And instead really kind of gravitating towards brands that emphasize value.
Makes sense.
So it's less about, flashy luxury and more about practicality. How does this benefit me in my day-to-day life?
Yeah, and the article uses this great example, which is Walmart, right? And their slogan, save money, live better.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Talk about being on point. It's not about being, cheap. It's about showcasing how being smart with your spending can lead to a genuinely better life, right? They're basically aligning themselves with exactly where the consumer's at.
And it's clearly resonating.
Yeah.
The article cites a Deloitte study showing that over 60% of consumers prioritize value for money over brand loyalty during these kinds of economic downturns.
Really?
Yeah, it's a huge shift in consumer psychology.
I wonder if that throws a wrench in the whole loyalty programs.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I mean, you wonder if those programs are really holding the same power as they used to.
Makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
When you feel like resources are limited, you're a little more picky about where they go. So how do businesses put this into their marketing, right?
Yeah.
Is it just a matter of slashing prices?
Oh yeah, lowering prices can be part of the equation. But it's really more about crafting a value proposition that speaks to the consumer, right?
Okay.
So for example, maybe highlighting the durability of a product or offering bundles or even showcasing how a product, could save you money in the long run.
So it's not like a race to the bottom, but rather like a strategic repositioning.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that.
And there's another point the article brings up, which I think is really interesting,
Okay.
which is this idea of flexibility. I think we can all relate to like wanting more options when we're not sure what's going to happen next, right?
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to, money.
Right. It's about that feeling of security.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I can try this, but if it doesn't work out, I'm not stuck. Right.
You're not trapped.
I'm not locked into a commitment I can't get out of.
Yeah.
So, think about lenient return policies or, adaptable payment plans, the ability to modify subscriptions. All of these become so much more appealing when people are feeling that that hesitation.
And it's interesting, they use the example of Airbnb.
Oh, yeah.
And how they handled things during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like they weren't just reacting, they were proactively creating that sense of security for their customers.
Right.
And then that actually ended up like attracting new customers.
Yeah, they really, it was brilliant, right? Because by offering that flexible booking, the ability to cancel easily, it reassured their existing customers.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also brought in all these new people who were just looking for some peace of mind, right? In a really, really crazy time.
Yeah. And the result?
Well, a 20% increase in bookings during a global pandemic.
That's wild. They turned a potential like total disaster into an opportunity.
Right. It's all about perspective and being proactive.
Right. It's like they said, hey, we get it. Things are crazy. We're going to make this easy for you.
Mm.
So we've got emphasizing value. Right?
Right.
And offering flexibility. And these are both like really powerful ways to connect with consumers when confidence is low. What's kind of the next level to this, right?
Well, I think the next layer has to be about building trust.
Okay.
Because when the economy feels shaky, people crave that stability.
Yeah.
Right? And they crave reliability.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I think content marketing comes in.
Content marketing. So you're talking about like blogs and videos and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. How does that build trust, though?
Well, I think it's about, it's about shifting the focus away from just trying to sell something.
Okay.
Right. And instead focusing on providing genuine value to your audience.
Yeah.
So it's about addressing their concerns, sharing relevant information, really becoming a resource that they can rely on,
So less buy now, more, hey, we understand what you're going through.
Exactly, yeah.
Here's something that might be helpful.
Exactly. And, they highlight HubSpot, again, as a really great example of this.
They do keep coming back to HubSpot.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason for that.
Okay.
They during economic downturns, they really focused on creating content that helped businesses navigate, whatever specific challenges they were facing at the time. So think like free resources, ebooks or insightful articles, maybe webinars, all geared toward just offering, genuine support.
And it's interesting. It's not just any old content. They were giving like data-driven like advice and stuff, which is, if I'm feeling uncertain, that's what I want, right?
Of course. Yeah. People want reliable information. They don't want fluff.
Yeah.
They want to know that, that what they're reading is actually going to be useful to them.
And it paid off for HubSpot. Their user base like jumped way up.
Yeah. It grew by 30% during the 2020 economic slowdown.
Yeah. Just by like being helpful, right?
It's amazing how, that approach can actually solidify your position as a thought leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a trusted resource. It's almost like you're saying, we're in this together.
Yeah,
we're here to help.
Exactly. So we've got emphasizing value, we've got offering flexibility, we've got building trust through content.
Oh.
All of these like crucial elements to navigating those, uncertain economic times. Is there anything else that businesses should be doing to really like fortify those customer relationships?
There's one more piece to this puzzle that I think is really important.
Okay.
And that's transparency.
Transparency. So being open and honest about your business practices.
Exactly. Even when things maybe aren't going so well,
Yeah. Yeah, but how do you actually do that though? How do you put that into practice?
Well, the article uses Patagonia as a fantastic example.
Okay.
They've always been incredibly open about their environmental impact and their business practices, even when it's not, the most flattering information.
Yeah. They're known for walking the walk.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
not just talking the talk. Sustainability is part of their DNA.
Yeah, and that authenticity really resonates with their customers. Even during economic downturns, when people are being more careful with their spending, Patagonia sales, they tend to remain pretty steady.
Wow.
And I think, a big reason for that is because they've built this foundation of trust, based on transparency.
So it's not just about offering a good product. It's about your actions and your values matching up.
It's about that alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and consumers are savvy. They can spot inauthenticity a mile away.
Yeah, they can smell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they see a brand that's truly, living its values, that creates a powerful connection. And that's something that, you just can't, you can't fake that.
And there's data to back this up, right?
Yeah. A 2019 study found that 94% of consumers are more likely to be loyal to a brand that offers complete transparency.
94%.
That's a huge number.
Wow. So it's not just a nice to have. It's
Right.
a need to have.
It's essential.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got emphasizing value, offering flexibility, building trust through content, embracing transparency. It's a lot, but it's kind of amazing how it all weaves together.
It is. Yeah.
So what else we got?
Well, there's one more crucial strategy that I think businesses need to be paying attention to,
Okay.
and that's social listening.
Social listening. So keeping an eye on what people are saying online.
It's a bit more than that. It's about actively analyzing those online conversations,
Right.
understanding the sentiment, identifying emerging trends, and then using all of that data to make smart, informed decisions.
So it's having your finger on the pulse of what your customers are
exactly
thinking and feeling.
Yeah, imagine being able to see not just what people are saying about your brand,
Yeah.
but also how are they feeling about it,
Yeah.
right? What are the nuances of their opinions? And that's incredibly valuable, especially when people are being more sensitive and discerning with their spending.
It's know your customer on steroids.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of companies that are doing this really well?
Yeah. Actually, the article mentions Coca-Cola.
Okay, Coca-Cola, classic.
Yeah. So they were actively monitoring conversations about healthy lifestyles. And they noticed that there was a growing concern about sugar intake.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So instead of ignoring it,
Right.
they adapted their marketing to emphasize their low calorie and their no sugar options.
Smart.
Yeah. So they weren't just reacting to a trend.
Yeah.
They were being proactive and aligning their messaging with these evolving consumer preferences.
Yeah.
And I think that built a lot of goodwill with their audience.
Yeah, it shows that they're listening.
Right. They're not just a faceless corporation.
Right.
They're actually paying attention, and they're willing to adapt.
Yeah, that can make all the difference.
It can, yeah. Especially when people are, being more cautious about where they're spending their money.
Okay, so we've got emphasizing value, offering flexibility, building trust through content,
Right.
embracing transparency, and now adding social listening to the mix.
It's a lot, but it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
And it can make a big difference.
So it sounds like there's a lot that businesses can do to, not just survive, but actually potentially thrive during these tougher economic times, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? The best part is a lot of these strategies are things that businesses can start implementing today.
Okay. So we've got the high-level overview, but I'm ready to get tactical.
Okay.
What are some specific actionable steps, things they can do right now to put these ideas into practice?
Well, the article outlines three simple but really powerful solutions that I think can make a big difference.
Okay, let's hear them.
So the first is highlighting your value proposition.
Uh-huh.
The second is implementing flexible policies.
Okay.
And the third is enhancing your content strategy.
All right, let's unpack these one by one.
Okay, sounds good.
Starting with highlighting your value proposition. what does that even mean? Is it just about like yelling about how awesome your product is?
It's a little more nuanced than that. I think it's about um, it's about showcasing why your product or service is the best choice for the customer right now,
Okay.
given whatever their concerns or priorities are at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
You need to move beyond just listing features and benefits and really articulate how you solve their problems
Okay.
and how you make their lives better, especially in the context of the current economic climate.
So it's framing your offering through the lens of like where the customer is at right now. How do businesses even like begin to do that?
Well, one thing the article suggests is conducting a comparative analysis.
Comparative analysis.
Yeah, I know it sounds a little technical.
Yeah, a little jargony.
But really, it's just about taking a look at your competitors and really trying to identify what makes your products or services either more cost-effective or higher quality or a better value overall.
So understanding your competitive advantage, not just what makes you unique, but like what makes you better.
Exactly. Yeah. What makes you the better choice, especially when value is top of mind for consumers.
Okay, so that's step one, right?
Right.
Conduct that comparative analysis.
Yep.
What's the next step in highlighting your value proposition?
Well, I think it's about harnessing the power of customer testimonials.
Ah, testimonial.
Yeah, they really work, don't they?
Yeah, because it's not you saying it. It's, real people having real experiences.
Yeah, and especially when those testimonials specifically mention the value.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And the quality of your offerings, compared to others.
Because it's one thing for you to toot your own horn, but when somebody else is like, hey, this, saved me money, or, this was beyond my expectations, for the price, that carries a lot of weight.
It does, yeah. It provides that social proof, and it builds credibility, and it shows, potential customers that you're not just making promises.
Yeah.
You're actually delivering.
So to recap, you conduct that comparative analysis, you create value-centric messaging, and you get those testimonials, you put them out there.
Yeah, use them.
All right, now, what about the second solution?
Joe.
Implementing flexible policies.
Yeah, this is where you're really demonstrating that you understand your customer.
Okay.
Their needs and maybe their anxieties as well, right? It's about adapting to the reality that people are craving those options and that reassurance, especially in times of uncertainty.
So being willing to bend the rules a little bit.
Yeah, show some empathy, right?
Yeah.
So think about things like, hassle-free returns or, no questions asked refunds or maybe flexible payment plans.
Okay.
These all send the message that you're willing to work with your customer and that you're going to accommodate their needs.
It's like you're saying, hey, we're not here to trap you in a contract.
Right.
We want you to feel good about doing business with us. So where do they even start with this, right?
Oh, the first step, according to the article, is to evaluate your current policies.
Okay.
So take a look at your existing return policies, your refund policies, your payment terms, and just see if there are areas where you could introduce more flexibility.
So not necessarily starting from scratch, but taking stock of what you've already got.
Exactly.
And seeing where you can make adjustments.
Yeah. The goal is to make doing business with you as easy and as risk-free as possible.
Makes sense. Okay, so you've identified those areas. What's next?
Well, then you need to announce those changes.
Okay.
You got to be clear about it.
Do you just send out a mass email?
Well, I think it's important to be more strategic than that. The article suggests maybe, writing up a really detailed announcement explaining the changes that you've made and posting it on your website, on your social media, and in email newsletters. The key is to make sure that the information is really easy to find.
Okay.
And easy to understand.
So make it clear, make it accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to show that you've heard their concerns and that you're taking action to address them.
So you do all that, and then what? Are you done?
Well, not quite. Implementing flexible policies it's an ongoing process.
Okay.
So you need to You need to actively seek feedback
Uh-huh.
from your customers on those new policies,
Mhm.
and be willing to adjust based on their needs and expectations.
So it's not a one and done, it's a constant like
Right.
evolution.
Yeah. Flexibility is all about being responsive and adaptable.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered highlighting your value proposition. We've covered implementing flexible policies.
Right.
Now let's talk about enhancing your content strategy.
Okay.
This seems like there's a lot here.
Yeah, I think this is where you can really shine,
Okay.
because this is where you're providing, valuable information and resources to your audience.
Uh-huh.
Remember, during times of uncertainty, people are hungry for knowledge
Okay.
and for guidance.
Yeah, they just want to like know what's going on.
They want to feel informed and empowered.
So it's about being that resource, that like
Yeah.
trusted place they can go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But how do you know what kind of content is going to work, right?
Well, it's important to be strategic.
Okay.
And the first step is to identify what the article calls pain points.
Pain points.
Yeah, no, it sounds
A little harsh.
a little harsh.
Yeah.
But it's not about it's not about being negative.
Uh-huh.
It's about really understanding, what are the challenges, what are the concerns, what are those anxieties that your target audience is facing.
It's about empathy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's about understanding, what's going on in their minds.
Okay, so how do you uncover that, right? Is it just like intuition?
Well, intuition can definitely play a role.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to back it up with data.
Okay.
So the article recommends, using things like surveys and social listening tools,
Uh-huh.
and even just customer feedback.
So, both the numbers
Yeah.
and the stories.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more you understand those pain points, the better equipped you're going to be to create content that truly resonates.
Okay. And once you've identified those pain points, what's next? Just start churning out content.
Well, again, it's about quality over quantity. So the next step is to create targeted content that really speaks to those specific challenges that you've identified.
So you're not a generalist, you're a specialist.
Exactly. Yeah. And that could include, blog posts,
Well-
how-to guides, videos, webinars, whatever format works best for your audience.
Yeah.
But the key is to provide solutions,
Okay.
and valuable insights.
Be helpful.
Yeah, be helpful.
Yeah, be that guide. So you put it out there, and then are you done?
Well, like with everything else we've talked about,
Yeah.
content marketing, it's an ongoing process as well.
Okay.
So the final step is really to analyze and optimize that content based on how it's performing.
So like how many likes did my Instagram post get?
Well, it's more in depth than that.
Okay.
It's about tracking metrics like engagement rates, shares, comments, even conversions,
Okay.
and seeing what's resonating with your audience, and then, adjusting your strategy accordingly.
So be data-driven. Look at those numbers, see what's working, what's not.
Exactly. The goal is to provide the most valuable content possible.
Yeah.
And that requires that constant learning and adaptation.
Okay, so to recap, you identify those pain points, you create targeted content that speaks to those challenges, and then you analyze it.
Right.
You optimize it
Yeah.
based on how it's doing.
Exactly.
Seems like a really good roadmap. So, we've talked about these 3 solutions, right? Highlighting your value proposition, implementing flexible policies, and enhancing your content strategy.
Right.
These all seem kind of interconnected.
They are.
Yeah.
I think by implementing all 3 of these, what you're doing is you're creating a really cohesive experience for your customer.
Okay.
That builds trust and loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And it demonstrates to them that you understand their needs.
Yeah.
You're there to support them.
Ugh. So we've talked a lot about strategy, but I want to know about the tools, the actual things you can use.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to understand these concepts, but how do you put them into action?
Right. Having the right tools can definitely make all the difference. And thankfully, the article highlights 3 software solutions that can be particularly helpful for this.
Okay, lay it on me. Give me those marketing must-haves.
All right, so the first one they mentioned is HubSpot CRM,
HubSpot CRM, okay.
which, at this point, it's not a surprise, right?
Yeah, HubSpot keeps coming up.
They do. They really do.
Yeah, what's so great about HubSpot CRM?
Well, at its core, it's all about managing those customer relationships effectively.
Okay.
So think of it as kind of a central hub for all your customer interactions, right?
Yeah.
It helps you organize all your client data, track leads, automate emails, and just get a really clear picture of the entire customer journey.
That sounds super helpful, especially when you're trying to, personalize your communication and make sure that you're really tailoring your offerings to meet specific needs.
Right,
But
exactly.
it's not just about blasting out generic messages. It's about nurturing those individual relationships.
Exactly. And what's great is HubSpot CRM, they offer a free plan
Oh, nice.
for basic features.
Yeah.
So, businesses of all sizes can at least get started, see if it's a good fit for them. And then if you need those more advanced features, they're paid plans, start at around $50 a month.
Not bad. Okay, what's the next tool?
The next tool that caught my eye was Hootsuite.
Hootsuite, I've heard of them.
Yeah, and they're really a powerhouse when it comes to social media management.
So that's like all your social media all in one place.
Exactly. Yeah, instead of jumping between different platforms, you can manage everything from one dashboard. So schedule posts, track engagement, analyze your performance across different platforms. You can even handle some of your social customer service through there.
Okay. So it keeps you organized, keeps you consistent with your posting, really just helps you maximize all your social media efforts.
Right, because we know how important social media is these days for connecting with customers.
Yeah.
And for building that brand loyalty.
Totally.
And Hootsuite's also great because it allows you to leverage social proof. You can easily share those customer testimonials and reviews that we were talking about earlier. And their pricing is pretty reasonable, too, starting at $19 a month for their professional plan.
Okay. So 2 down, 1 to go.
Right. And the final tool that they recommend is Zendesk.
Zendesk. Okay.
And this one really focuses on customer service and support.
Ah, so important.
It is. It is. A bad customer service experience can really damage a relationship.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't matter how good your product is.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what Zendesk is designed to prevent.
Okay.
It streamlines your customer service operations and really helps you create a positive experience, for every customer.
Okay.
So it offers things like ticketing systems, live chat, the ability to build a help center, things like that.
So it makes things more efficient. Make sure those inquiries are handled promptly and people feel like they're heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're taking that guesswork out of, customer service, and you're helping create that consistent and positive experience.
And hopefully turning what could be a negative experience into a positive one.
Exactly. Yeah. And, their plans start at $49 a month per agent.
Okay.
Which, I think is a pretty reasonable investment for
Yeah.
the peace of mind it provides.
This article is so practical.
It is.
I love it. It's not just about here's the concept, but here are the tools.
Here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Here's how you do it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so valuable. And these tools, they're just a starting point, right?
Yeah. There are a ton of resources out there that can help businesses navigate these uncertain times.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this part. I think it'd be helpful to kind of recap the main takeaways.
Yes, sounds good.
Just so it really sticks.
Absolutely. I think the most important takeaway is that consumer confidence is a powerful force in the economy.
Yeah.
And when it's low, businesses can't just keep doing what they've always done. They need to adapt.
Like that old saying, the only constant is change.
Right.
Yeah. Especially in business.
Exactly. So what are some of those, key strategies that we talked about that can help businesses navigate those shifts?
Well, we talked about emphasizing value over luxury and how, that really resonates with consumers who are being more cautious. It's not about being cheap.
Right.
It's about offering genuine value and showing how your product or service can, make their lives better.
And then we talked about the importance of flexibility, especially when it comes to things like return policies and payment plans, subscription options. It's about giving customers that sense of security and control, which is, so important when things feel a little bit out of control.
And let's not forget about the power of content marketing.
Right. Becoming that trusted resource.
Yeah, building those relationships, not just trying to push products, but really, sharing information, addressing concerns, becoming that helpful expert.
Absolutely. And building on that, we also talked about transparency, being open and honest, showing that that you're a genuine company, that you operate with integrity.
Yeah.
It's about aligning those actions with your values and really building trust to that authenticity.
And we talked about social listening, going beyond just like monitoring your social media to really trying to understand what people are saying,
Right.
what those trends are.
Understanding the sentiment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's almost like market research in real time,
It really is.
So it's a lot.
It is, but I think, as we've seen, a lot of these strategies, they're really interconnected.
Yeah.
They work best when they're used together.
It's not about just picking one.
Right.
It's about integrating them into a full, cohesive approach.
Exactly. It's about creating that holistic strategy that truly resonates with your target audience.
It's like weaving a tapestry.
I love that.
Yeah, each thread is important to the overall strength,
Oh, yeah.
So even though economic uncertainty can be kind of scary, there are ways to, not only survive, but actually potentially do really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By implementing these strategies and using the right tools,
yeah,
businesses can weather the storm and maybe even come out stronger on the other side.
Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Think about your favorite brands for a moment.
Okay.
What is it about their approach that makes you trust them, even when, things are tough?
That's a great question. What qualities or actions create that sense of loyalty,
Yeah. Are they doing some of the things we've talked about, without you even realizing it?
It's a good thing to think about. The psychology of marketing is fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
And often the most effective strategies are the ones that work kind of, subtly.
Yeah, under the surface.
Yeah, influencing our decisions without us even being aware of it.
It's pretty amazing how much is going on in our brains that we don't even realize.
Right, exactly.
We'll leave you with that question to ponder.
Okay.
Ready to move on to part 3?
Let's do it.
It's easy to get a little overwhelmed when we're talking about like economic downturns and all this stuff, right? But I really like how this article, it doesn't just present the problem. It's like, here's the problem, but here are all the solutions, like a toolbox,
It really is.
Yeah.
And we've explored so many valuable strategies in this deep dive.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that this is really just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
We've given you a framework. We've given you some ideas, some tools to get started.
Uh-huh.
But the real magic happens when you take all of this information and you apply it to your own unique situation.
It's like we've given you the ingredients, but now you gotta make the dish.
Exactly, yeah. And every business is different, right?
Yeah.
What works for one company might not work for another.
Right.
So it's important to experiment, to analyze your results, and to continuously, refine your approach.
So it's not a set it and forget it. It's like we're talking about, you got to be adaptable.
Yeah, you got to be willing to pivot, to adjust as you learn, what's working for your audience and what's not.
And don't be afraid to try new things.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no one-size-fits-all solution in marketing. The most successful businesses are the ones that are willing to think outside the box.
Yeah, get creative.
Yeah, be creative.
Embrace the challenge.
Yeah, and stay curious and keep learning.
Always something new to learn. So, we're all in this together, right? We're all navigating these uncertain times, and I think we can learn a lot from each other.
I agree, yeah. We're all in the same boat. So to our listeners, we encourage you to share your own insights.
Yeah.
What strategies have you found effective?
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Share your experiences, because we can all learn from each other.
What I love about, these deep dives that we do, it's not just about us sharing information. It's like we're building a community, right?
It is, yeah. A community of learners, people who are all, just trying to grow and to succeed.
I'm always so impressed by like the resilience and the creativity that we see in the business world. There's like a real, we're all in this together spirit, I think, especially when things get tough.
Yeah, there really is. And that's what makes me, ultimately optimistic.
Yeah.
Because even in the face of uncertainty, there's always that opportunity, right? For growth, for innovation.
So to our listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive, remember, stay positive, stay informed, and keep those marketing strategies adaptable.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
That's a wrap for this episode of Undone Marketing. If you liked what you heard, don't stop here. Check out our other episodes for more straight takes on today's hottest marketing topics. New episodes dropping weekly, so hit follow and stay ahead of the game. Got a question or topic you want us to tackle? Find us online and let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.